So it was not that long ago, to be honest. Maybe last Monday, maybe last Tuesday, I think it was, that the term Partygate first, shall we say, exploded into public consciousness. And it's been a year since it's all this Partygate stuff. And what a year it has really been. I mean, myself and others certainly sort of among sort of the sort of the political commentator community were almost certain that these Partygate allegations would be what brought down Boris Johnson, with many of us expecting, well, all these revelations that are just coming out one after another that eventually that would be what took him down. But it turned out to be something a bit far longer, that the Tory MPs were willing to at least tolerate, Boris messing up some of the time. But the problem was that these Partygate allegations came after everything else. And of course, ultimately, the sex pest allegations. It was, shall we say, just one too many mess up, shall we say, was the final straw. And of course, Johnson had to go. So, it's been a wild year, but it's strange to think that it was almost only a year ago we were starting to hear about these Partygate allegations. But yeah, of course, these new allegations are now coming up. We're going to be seeing Partygate again, certainly coming back into, shall we say, public consciousness again, because, of course, the Privileges Committee is meeting to look into Boris's activities. Some of it has been delayed because, first of all, you've had, obviously, the Queen's death. That's delayed it. There's been delays with the government refusing to hand over some information. So that's been a whole thing. They're having to find sort of a new member for the committee because one of them quit because they were, deeply Tory and said, oh, this is unfair on poor Boris, trying to sort of protect him because, again, if Boris loses this, would start a by-election, which, if you look at the polling numbers and certainly in his Uxbridge seat, he would not win. So, as always, guys, like I say, before we go jumping into this and see what's going on here, because, like I say, Partygate is going to be coming back, I suspect, heavily much with a vengeance, because it looks like the new committee hearings are going to start around mid-January of next year. So that's going to be fun, certainly. So, like I say, do remember to hit that subscribe button if you want to see more of this, because we will be covering it when those happen. And, of course, hit the like and share button as well. That will help out the channel. And, of course, down below, if you'd like to support the channel in a different way, there are my Patreon page. There's one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee. There's the YouTube thank you button. And, of course, there's the Pony Club you can join as well when you like to support the channel. So, as always, guys, like I say, thank you very much for watching. And now on with this. So, this comes from The Guardian with the title of Partygate. Ministers accused of writing a blank cheque for Boris Johnson's legal bills. Ministers have been accused of writing a blank cheque for Boris Johnson's legal bills. As it emerged, the taxpayer-funded support had been extended to help defend himself against claims he'd misled Parliament over Partygate. With just days left until the contract expires with the firm Peters & Peters, which Johnson and the government have relied on to disparage an investigation by the Privilege Committee, The Guardian has learned the Cabinet Office intends to renew it. And if you may remember, just a couple of months ago, we were covering this, the fact that a lot of Tories were desperately trying to defend Boris because he still has a big supporting and fan base on those Tory benches. And they are determined to bring him back. They see Johnson's dismissal as unfair, that he really didn't get his time to shine, that, the Johnson electoral magic was still a thing that they could rely on, that it didn't matter, that Johnson would be the person to lead the Tories into this historic fifth term that they were certainly talking about before all this, the Partygate stuff kicked off. If you remember that particular summer, everyone was like, oh my God, COVID's over. It's done. Boris can get out again. We can start, doing all this stuff again. Oh my God, it's going to be magical. We're going to win a fifth term. Look how quickly the tide has indeed turned on that prediction. But anyway, back to it. So the extension could be up to for 6 months, given the investigation's slow progress, and is likely to be signed off without a new tender process, sources have said. Peters and Peters was given a 4-month contract worth nearly over £130,000 in August. David Picnic, I think I say Picnic, I think that's how you say it, an advocate and the King's Counsel, was instructed on the firm's behalf. The Life peer has since sought to discredit the investigation by claiming that MPs on the cross-party committee had adopted a, quote, fundamentally flawed approach, and their interpretation of whether any misleading was deliberate would have a chilling effect on future statements by ministers. As we've said, they have been desperately trying to sort of stop this investigation any way they can. But back to it. Johnson himself has protested his innocence and is said to believe it is unclear what the committee is investigating. Peters and Peters' contract expires on the 16th of December, but sources have confirmed that it would be extended to help Johnson and the government while the Privilege Committee inquiry continued. They said that procurement rules meant that because the same service was being requested, the government did not need to retender the contract. The Cabinet Office declined to say whether more money would be spent on extending the contract or if the legal advice would continue to be provided without an existing budget. Angela Rayner, Labour's deputy leader, said that Rishi Sunak had, quote, serious questions to answer about whether more taxpayer cash would be spent on defending Johnson during a cost of living crisis, saying that families up and down the country who are struggling to make ends meet will be rightly outraged at this sickening waste of money, she told The Guardian. Rayner has said that despite Sunak's pledge to restore integrity and accountability to the government, there was already failing to stop the rot in Downing Street, and pointed out that the government had still not appointed an ethics advisor. The oral evidence sessions, which are expected to begin at the end, which were expected to begin at the end of November, are now not likely to begin until the mid-January. Johnson himself also would be called to give evidence, and it was said to have had requested he be accompanied to the hearing by a legal team, something a source close to him has denied. Because the Privilege Committee is in control of the timetable for witnesses, sessions, and requests for follow-up evidence, and the writing of its final report, the contract extension could be up to 6 months. While the delays in the inquiry were caused by the death of the Queen, wrangling over the addition of a new member to the committee, and of course the government was also accused of trying to delay things and refusing to hand over or even heavily redacting key documents. Chris Brandt, a Labour MP and chair of the Standards Committee, suggested that Johnson could afford to pay his own legal bills, highlighting the money the former Prime Minister has made since leaving office, including a speech he charged over £276,000 for. Nice work if you can get it. But anyway, Chris Brandt had this to say. The government seems to have issued a blank cheque to Boris Johnson at a time when public finances are meant to be tight, Brandt said. Frankly, Boris Johnson can afford to pay his own legal representation. Ministers had previously said that public money is not going to be used to defend Johnson, even though he is no longer a member of government, because the inquiry has, quote, potential implications for all future statements by ministers of the Crown and current and future administrations. So, yeah. This is going to get interesting, I think. Like I say, this is just the first opening salvo of what I, heavily suspect is going to be a lot of stuff to come. Certainly, that's for sure. But yeah, I agree. Johnson's, if you're getting over, almost close to 300 grand a speech, then yeah, I think he can certainly afford to pay his own legal expenses. And remember, this was a guy who was complaining about the salary he got. Certainly, working at the Times in his columnist job, which he described as chicken feed. He even then described, he was being, penuried because, of the salary he was receiving as Prime Minister. Yeah, it's this is just the start, I think, of more Partygate stuff to come. Like I say, expect this to come roaring back, certainly into sort of public consciousness. Again, certainly by looks of it, mid-January when these sort of stuff is to start. But yeah, this is going to be quite interesting. We'll have to see. We will have to see what happens. But yes, Yeah, it's going to be quite interesting because, like I say, the implications of this, if the committee sort of comes out, writes the report, and said, Johnson, yes, we think that yes, he has misled Parliament, um, could start a by-election. If it does start a by-election in his seat, you look at the polls, Johnson is not likely to win, and that's bye bye Boris for at least the time being. Um, Certainly as an MP. Um, but of course, it wouldn't be sort of goodbye. Like I say, as we've said before, I think Johnson would be offered like a seat on like talk radio or whatever, or maybe even start his own Rush Limbaugh style outfit. We've discussed that possibility in the past. I think that is something Johnson would far prefer. Um, to be honest, than sitting on the backbenches, twiddling his thumbs, as we've seen very recently, causing a lot of trouble for Rishi Sunak. Um, so we'll have to see. But this isn't going to go well, I think, for Johnson. This isn't going to go well for the Tories either. And certainly, as we have seen that, Rishi Sunak's promise to restore integrity in number 10, so far really isn't going well. And certainly, Sunak will be expected to follow up, certainly on the recommendations of these reports. Will he follow through? Who knows? Like I say, if there is a Tory rebellion over this, he may even back down, which again doesn't make him look good. But obviously, we'll come to that bridge when that happens. But as always, guys, like I say, thank you very much for watching. As always, please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.